Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about voice type and if it matters, and how it matters if it does. So, if you want to learn about some of this stuff, I'm going to say some things, talk about some things that are going to make people upset, and they're not going to be happy about it. And if you want to hear about this stuff, join me. We're going to chat about it. Most of the comments and the messages that I get are very lovely. It's people that relate to the way I speak and talk and break information down. I never figured a way to speak and talk about these things. It's just the way that I understand, interpret information, and then relay that information. And it's across the board about everything in life. If I was talking about anything, it would be the same way. So I'm very grateful for that. That's very nice. I'm glad that I can help people by doing this. So like I said, most of those messages I get are that, or wanting lessons and things of that nature. But something that does come across often are people complaining about voice type. Well, what voice type are you? I'm this voice type, and my teacher says blah blah, but my voice type says and they're very upset, and they get very upset because I said something they don't agree with, and their vocal teacher said this, and their vocal teacher's classically trained, and they're Italian, and they said mezzo, soprano, so so let's talk about voice type and how much it actually matters. So again, I've been teaching for 12 years, but I am an untrained singer, meaning everything I've learned and accrued to this time, I've figured out myself and put into practice, so much so that I was able to teach it now for the past 12 years and help people across the board with many, many issues and be able to hear absolutely meticulously everything somebody's doing and not doing. So I say that because when it comes to the terminology of having these things perfectly Italian, singing, operatic, a lot of times I don't study that stuff because I didn't really study that stuff because it doesn't really appeal to me and it doesn't matter. It never really seemed to push my journey as a rock singer or a metal singer further. It was just terms and words and things like that. So again, I often refer to myself as a baritone, most common male voice. Most of the people, I'd say 85% over the course of 12 years, have a voice similar to mine, or their bridge is almost exactly where mine is, which is in an F sharp 4. So, meaning, that's where their voice wants to naturally break. So, what does that mean? Does it mean everybody's, baritone or whatever, or that it's perfectly F sharp 4s? When I read about it, it said that a baritone should be at a D4. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. And what I find that most of these messages are coming from is a place of fear, a place of some lazy person that doesn't want to do the work, and a place of somebody that thought that they had the right information. And I'll explain this a little bit better. When I say that somebody's lazy and they don't want to do the work, all of the information about singing across the board applies to any voice type. Anything I've taught, if you're a female and you're 10 years old, I've taught them too. It still all applies. How to sing, how to support, how to mix, everything still applies. How to keep your throat open, how to modify vowels, it all applies. It doesn't matter. So it's all the same. But again, some of these people want to not study the information. They want to just say that person has that voice and I can't do that. So, and then they just want to be like, fuck this. And then they're going to go play video games or whatever. They just don't want to put the work in. They want to be able to kind of have a victim mentality and just be like, oh, well, I can't. And and here's why. I looked it up. So get that out of your mind. That's ridiculous. And like I said, I'm going to actually describe to you what the limitations are in terms of your voice type. And it's not as bad as you would think it is. Now, I have some notes here so I can try to stay on track because I can be a chatterbox. So we were talking about voice type, and I talked about fear, and I talked about the messages I get. I'm going to talk about what the actual limitations are now, and then I'm going to get into some other areas just so people have a broader understanding of how these things work and how it all makes sense. Now, what actually are the limitations of voice type? Some people might jump right to range. Sort of, not really that much. As a male voice, a baritone person like myself, God knows if I can get away with saying that anymore. I can sing up to about an A5, or I've hit A5s in songs that I've recorded. Can I do that on stage? Not really. Have I heard many people do that on stage? Not really. Most people get a little bit tired, and that's a fucking high note, super high note. For females as well, but super high note. You can't say anything through it. You can't really express yourself through it in terms of emotion because it's fucking high. So even when we're talking about like that person can sing higher than me, I just said I can sing up to an A5. That's ridiculously high and not really usable. And if you're writing a song and you're like, I want to express myself and I want to tell the story of this thing or whatever, and you feel so inclined to be like, I'm going to sing up around here. That's kind of ridiculous. You can use it in different ways. Well, it's similar to the Mariah Carey thing of like, oh, I'm going to put some whistle voice parts here. There's no words. It's just sound. And that's it. As a male, a lower voiced male, I can get up to that high. So once again, even in terms of range, I'm not personally that limited. And I found most males, their head voice at least, can go just about that high. And I still don't really use that much. Anyway, we're going to get away from this, but the point being, again, you're not really limited by range. Your range can still go pretty freaking high to the point where it's unnecessary. Unless you're one of these people that just really wants to say like you have a 4 octave to 5 octave range or something shit like that, which how long is that really going to sustain you? It doesn't matter. So then what's the main thing that's limiting people? Actually, the main thing that you're going to find as you continue this journey and you put the work in to learn how to mix and to learn how to stay open, all these kinds of things, you're going to find that some people can enunciate higher better than you can. That's the main problem with voice type. Is somebody, once again, we'll talk about Don't Stop Believing by Journey. Probably a higher voice tenor when he was in his prime. He can sing Don't Stop Believing more clearly than somebody like me. I'm going to be forced more open and have to modify more of that. If I don't, I'll get more in my jaw and I'll have more of what I refer to as the milk jug effect, where I'm like, I'm doing it, I'm really doing it. And then you start to peter out. But anyway, that's mostly what you're going to encounter. So what does that mean? It means, again, you're going to be a little bit more forced open as a lower voice type and have to modify a little bit more. Don't stop believing, hold on to that feeling. He might be able to go feeling and have more of the jaw engaged. And I don't need to break all this information down because I've done that in plenty of other videos and will continue to do so. But even with that shitty example right there, you can tell I can't go feeling. I have to go feeling. Now, even in opera and classical music and things like that, even in those terms, they're going to talk about as they approach their bridge, as they get closer to the bridge, they're going to have to start modifying or changing or shaping the vocal tract in a different way because they're pulling up too much tension, too much volume, etc. to sing higher. They often will refer to having to cry into the sound because singing higher is often referred to as crying on pitch. What does that mean? That means they're modifying the vocal tract using other muscles to keep everything connected so that they can hit higher notes. But unlike opera music, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's going to take 5 years for you to hit 2 notes outside of your range. That's bullshit. I could probably teach you how to sing in mixed voice if I was working with you in a couple months. Now, are you going to always sound like opera singers, like this or whatever, in the way they do it? No, we're not going for that. This is rock music. This is pop music, R&B, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, again, even in classical music, things like that, they're using these techniques to get their voice to go higher. They're using cry techniques and things like that. So, again, lastly, the main thing you're going to come across is, okay, do I have to stay more forced open, or can I enunciate these words? Am I still in more of a chest register, or am I kind of bleeding more into head register? That's the main thing you're going to come across. Everything else is the same across the board. So I'm going to get into some stuff here that people aren't going to like because I'm going to talk about the fear based on the kind of messages I get of like, well, Axl Rose ruined his voice, and Chris Cornell did this, or God knows, man. There's so many messages like that. I'll put it this way: if you love Axl Rose and you're mimicking his voice back in the day, fucking November Rain and Paradise City, and you're doing all these kinds of things, and you get close to it. But every step of the way, you're afraid maybe he was singing wrong. Maybe he wasn't singing right. Maybe that's not good for you. The fucking dude sang for what, like 40 years? Over and over and over with drugs and alcohol and smoking and partying and screaming over and over, record after record, and touring and ridiculous amounts of shit that you're not going to do. That sounds really negative, but it's so fucking true. That person, that human being, was one of the most popular people on the planet. Most of us are not going to get to anywhere close to that. So if you think that you mimicking something they're doing and getting close to it, and if you can, that's tremendous, by the way. But if you can get close to anything like that, and you start touring and you start doing that kind of stuff, he did it for how long until now? We don't know his diet or lifestyle anymore. He could be, eating sandwiches with tacks in them. We have no idea what he's doing or what he did. And a couple years ago, he was singing with AC/DC. Anyway, point being, again, you have no fucking idea at all what this person did. And they had a tremendous career. And he still might get his voice back. Who the fuck knows? Geddy Lee from Rush was able to do all these things and then kind of lost it and then figured some things out and got back up and running. So many of these people. Anyway, the point being is you cannot compare yourself to some of the most popular, hardworking musicians on the planet. Elton John was one of the most popular people on the planet, throwing his voice around. What was his diet consisting of? Cocaine and alcohol and sex with copious amounts of people and touring and playing all the time and interviews and ridiculous amounts of shit that none of us are going to deal with. Then he blew his voice out and he fucked his voice up and he had to get vocal surgery. Again, was he singing wrong? Maybe, but none of us, here's the point of all this, none of us know at a huge capacity like that, kind of like weightlifting or being a fucking football player or something like that, none of us really know on a continued use scale over not only a decade, but maybe 2, 3, 4 decades, if something could be sustainable, even when done correctly, or even some version of correctly, for that long period of time. Could an opera singer that sings really healthy, have we had one that's been that popular that people know about, that sang for 40 years and still sounded amazing, can still hit the highest note and everything? I don't really know. I don't really care. It's not that interesting to me. But anyway, the point being, again, do we know that the voice as a muscle for that long period of time, extended from maybe the age of 20 to 60 years old, could actually, in fact, stay healthy, open, operating perfectly? Most people's muscles, when used very intensely, do not work for that long period of time. So get the fear out of your head. It's all good. The last part of this I'm going to say is that you're going to have to almost throw your voice out. You're going to have to push your voice to know your limits. If you don't, you're just going to be shrouded in fear about, I don't know if this is right. I don't know if I should do that. And I don't know if you're going to be afraid of it. You got to push your voice around. Otherwise, you're not going to know the limitations. That way, when you start to hit those limitations, you start to feel some of the fatigue. You're like, oh, okay, I shouldn't have done that one thing, or I should have backed off here, or I should have go a little bit easier for the rest of the set, et cetera, et cetera. You got to learn about those things. I've never blown my voice out, not once. Does that mean I'm amazing? No. It just means physically, I started to pay attention to really get to know those levels of like, that's getting into a bad area, and then back off or change the way I'm kind of doing it. So I know people are going to be upset about certain things I said here, and people are going to be like, oh my God, he said that you should blow your voice out, and he said that you should scream and yell and know your limitations. But it's very true. You got to learn where the wall is. You got to learn what happens when you go a little bit over the wall. Like, what's going on over here? Sure is loud over here. Anyway, if you want to book lessons with me, if you like the way that I teach, you like all those different things, you can go to sterlingrjackson.com. You can book lessons right through my website. You do not need to email me and tell me your life story. You know, it's great. I can't email a lot of people back. You can just book right through there, and then I'll see you, and we use Zoom. If you want to join me on Patreon, I teach a lot more over there, always trying to share more things over there, and you're also supporting me as an artist and as a human being in my life so that I can stay afloat and keep making things like this. So I appreciate you. I hope some of this made sense to you. I hope it helped in some kind of way. all the information's the same. Just keep working at it. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day what your voice type is. All right, thanks.